A warm welcome to all our viewers. I'm Lulama Zono. Thank you for joining us here on Ship to Shore. Today, I'm delighted to be talking to Success Etim from Nigeria. Success, your resume precedes you. You've studied in several universities. You've been an officer on board. You've also worked for several global companies. So, Success, thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
Hi, Lulama. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. To begin our conversation, Success, before we actually talk about all these academic achievements and also professional achievements, let's start from the beginning. Share with us briefly your background and what sparked the interest for you in maritime.
Okay, Lulama, thanks so much for that question. Just to first of all give a disclaimer to your viewers.
Sure.
Whatever answers I give here are my personal opinions and doesn't represent that of any organization or party. So how did I get into maritime? Growing up, I always loved uniforms. So I remember at a young age, I had joined the Boy Scout. So I had always loved anything about uniforms. And after my secondary school, I wanted to get into the army.
I see.
But my dad wasn't in support of it. And during that period, someone gave us a calendar which had pictures of naval officers. So I fell in love with the white and white. So I always dreamed of wearing a uniform like that. But because my dad didn't support my move into the military, I had to look for alternative. So when someone told me about the maritime industry and that you could study a course and you still wear a uniform, but you don't have to be a combatant
Sure.
Navy, I jumped at the opportunity. That was how I got there.
Oh, I see. I see. No, that's fantastic. Now, coming to your actual academic record, you were a student at Southampton Solent University, Glasgow Maritime Academy, and Memorial University of Newfoundland. Take us through this educational journey. What programs did you undertake, and what actually did you learn from them?
Okay, very good question, Lulama, very good question. So I'm going to take you a step back. Actually, the journey didn't start from there. So I first of all attended a school in Nigeria, that's Maritime Academy of Nigeria,
Okay.
Oron. That's where my maritime education started from, and I obtained an ND from there. One thing I would say about that school is that I benefited a lot, especially regimentally. It sort of shaped me into the kind of person that I have become today. From there, I had opportunity of writing a scholarship exams, and I passed.
Mhm.
That was how I found myself in the UK. So it wasn't, I didn't have to sponsor myself to further my education in the UK.
I see.
So my company sponsored me there, and I started my journey from Southampton Solent University. It was as if I was learning everything new, because back in Nigeria, we didn't have the facilities. You
I
know, I
see.
was hearing a lot of new words there. I learned a lot of new things there. And the peak of my education at Southampton was obtaining my certificate of competency, which I did in 2014. Along with that, I obtained a Foundation of Science in maritime operations.
Mhm.
I wasn't satisfied at that. So after I started work in 2014, after I became an officer. In 2015, I decided to go back to Southampton Solent to do a top-up degree to get my BSc.
I see.
And I got my BSc in 2017, 2018 stroke 2019. I went back to school to get my Chief Med Certificate of Competency in the UK. That's what took me to Glasgow Maritime Academy. And it's a beautiful school. Their pass rate is very good. That's what informed me to even go there in the first place. And true to it, I passed my orals in first sitting. And from there, same 2019, I had applied for some schools to do my master's program because I've always loved progress. I've always loved to further my education. So I wanted to get a master's. I got admission into two schools. One was in the UK and one was in Canada. When I compared my options, I decided to diversify a bit to somewhere else, you know, just to have experience of the Canadian education system. So that's how I landed in Memorial University of Newfoundland.
Oh, that's great. Now, you were in the UK and you also in Canada as a Nigerian. How did you find the transition? You know, how was that for you, moving from your home country and finding yourself in these different environments altogether? Just briefly, how did you manage the transition?
Okay, for Canada, I've never been there, so I took an online master's program, so I could work as well as school. So I didn't have to quit my job and my source of income. For the UK, to be honest, it's, you know, before, as Africans, you would always hear people tell you about racism and the rest. There were a few, maybe less than 1%. That I witnessed, but it wasn't anything major. Especially my colleagues, you couldn't really tell that, oh, this is African and I'm British. There wasn't that divide between us. We all worked together. We all collaborated through school. So I didn't really see anything that informed me about racism, apart from the less than 1% that I told you about.
Sure. Okay, no, that's fantastic then. Now, moving a little bit forward with our conversation, you then had the opportunity to be part of a global company, Shell, as a deck officer. How did this opportunity come about? What were your responsibilities? And what did you learn from all of this?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that I got sponsored. So if you research about Nigeria LNG, initially the company was managed by a lot of foreigners, and the company decided to do what they call Nigerianization. So they wanted Nigerians to come in and learn, you know, in order to take over some of the jobs that the foreigners were doing. So at the time, Shell was managing ships for Nigeria LNG. They were managing some of their ships. So the sponsorship came under that platform. So when I finished my certificate of competency, the first ship that I joined was still managed by Shell. So, and looking at the company, if you ask me one thing I learned from them is continuous improvement. Shell as a company is always looking for ways to grow and develop. And they also have a flair for developing human capacity. And one thing, if you go to Shell today and you ask anybody who has worked there, they will tell you the number one thing in Shell is safety. So their safety record is top notch. Like they are the leading, in my opinion, they are the leading in the maritime industry when it comes to safety. I will give it to them.
Okay, no, that's great. That's great. And then you touched on this earlier as you were talking about this Nigerianization of foreign-owned companies, or at least participation in certain sectors. You then moved to Nigeria LNG Ship Management. Share with us what you did there a brief outline of your role that you played there, and how did that role help you grow as a professional?
Okay, so the ships I talked about earlier that were managed by Shell were later on handed over to this company you just mentioned, NLNG Ship Management Limited. Those ships were handed over to them.
Sure.
So we are staffs of that company. So I continued my sea career with them. Shell is like a role model from them. They took a lot of things from Shell. So the safety standards and the human capital improvement they collected. So I progressed from Shell. I was a third officer onto the NLNG ships. We call them in abbreviation NSML, onto the NSML ships as a third officer. While with them was when I obtained my BSc. And while with them, I went for my chief mate and came back. So I grew from a third officer to a second officer. And I was then deployed last year from the ship to shore. So that's how I got to the shore position that I am. So it's been a very good progress for me, and it's been a very good platform that I had in order to be able to transition from ship, and now I'm having shore experience.
No, that's great. You are now a security advisor. What does that work entail?
Really, so I always don't even introduce myself as a security advisor. I tell people I'm a maritime security advisor. Because if I say I'm a security advisor, is a very broad role.
Wow.
But when you put the word maritime in front of it, it narrows it down and someone can understand what you're doing. So everybody is aware of the spike of piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. As per the ISPS code, companies that have terminals are required to have a port facility security officer. So that is one of my responsibility, and I'm not the only one on the roll. So it's basically just making sure the terminal is safe, making sure that ships coming to the terminal are safe. It's just protecting the assets, the maritime assets of the company. Briefly, that's what it is.
Okay. No. That's clear enough. That's very clear. We can easily understand what you mean by what you're saying. Now, moving on to much broader questions that affect your country and bordering nations as well. One of the major challenges that face Nigeria and states bordered by the Gulf of Guinea, countries like Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, Ghana, Togo, Benin, is that of piracy. Give us a sense of the extent of this problem.
If I'm to answer your question, I would just say I think we are at a point of no return. Sounds funny, but to me, that's my opinion. I think that's true. You see, when piracy started in Somalia, it just started as a child's play, and then it becomes so sophisticated, and it become a multi-billion dollar industry. So there are people who actually invest in this industry. So I see piracy in the Gulf of Guinea as getting to a point of no return. I don't see it stopping anytime soon, except maybe the countries surrounded by that belong to this Gulf of Guinea, that you've mentioned a few, come together and take a drastic action. Except that happens, I think we are not going to see it stop, because day by day you hear ships being attacked, and these attacks are not just attacking the ships to steal stuffs from them, you now hear kidnapping people, holding them hostage, calling their company, asking for ransom, and the ransom are paid in millions of dollars. So if someone is profiting from these kidnappings and the ransoms, I don't see it stopping anytime soon. So we might become worse than Somalia, I think.
Wow. That's really sad to hear. Now,
It is.
just to get a clear sense from what you're saying, are the pirates sort of aiming for specific types of vessels, or are they going for any? Are they looking at tankers? Are they looking at platforms, floating platforms? Are they going for facilities, shore-based facilities that, say, for instance, that would refine the oil or whatever the case may be? What is the modus operandi for these guys?
So it's very difficult to track. Um, it's very difficult to understand their mode of operation. I don't think that they specifically target a certain type of vessel. I think most times it is just random, and they attack vessels that are less prepared. These days, you see attacks on floating platforms. So it's getting deeper day after day. So before they used to operate closer to land, maybe 50 nautical miles,
Sure.
60 nautical miles. But these days you are seeing piracy happening deep into the sea. And one begins to suspect that there's an involvement of a mother vessel. And if pirates can go that deep, the question becomes, where is safe? Where are you going to go? So I think there is most of the attacks are just random. I've seen attacks where they kidnapped crew of a fishing trawler, and you ask yourself, how much can they really get from these guys? But family and friends would gather, raise funds, and maybe pay for the ransom. So it's just any vessel that looks like an easy target for them. And again, these guys are not looking to be killed. They don't want to die. So they just target people that are easy prey. They just jump on them. Slow moving vessels, low freeboard, stuffs like that. Less prepared vessels in generally.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Wow. Wow. Now, obviously, this problem of piracy takes place in a context. For instance, if you look at the piracy problem in in East Africa, specifically Somalia, one of the causes, one of the contributors to it were weak governance in the state itself. So you couldn't, there was no patrolling and all of those kinds of things happening around the coast. There was no one really taking responsibility, that is, from the state. Now, with your problem there, that side, what are the root causes? What are the underlying causes that are, fueling this problem?
Okay, I believe that the underlying factors are similar to what we have in Somalia. At the bottom of it, what you're going to find is poverty, underemployment at the root of if you do the root cause analysis, that's what you're going to find. But beyond that, in Nigeria, I would say marginalization. So the oil producing states in Nigeria most times cry out that the federal government are not taking care of their area. So the oil is coming from my state, but there is no development, to compare with the oil that I am producing. So you have people from, we call it the Niger Delta. You have people from the Niger Delta who see it as an opportunity to reap back from the government or from the IOCs, the oil companies operating in the area. So if you want to tackle the problem, you have to tackle unemployment. I mean, it will be difficult for somebody to come and call you out, take you out from your employment and give you a gun, put you on a boat and say, go out to the sea to go and kidnap people or to go and start attacking vessels. So if we have employment and the government is deliberately taking a step to eradicate poverty, I
Sure.
think that's when we are going to start seeing traction in solving the problem.
Wow. Well, no, we hope that's going to really happen soon. That's really going to happen soon.
I hope so too. I hope so.
Okay, so in an effort to resolve this problem of sea robbery, because some people have actually said it's not piracy, it's actually sea robbery. We saw a collaboration between a variety of key stakeholders. For instance, the United Nations, the Economic Community of West African States, the International Maritime Organization, and others to formulate what came to be known as the Yaoundé Code of Conduct. Talk to us about the solutions. You've mentioned one just now of that the long-term economic solution to this problem. What other solutions can you actually think of that would address these problems? Say, for instance, collaborations, and also just talk to us a little bit about, have you seen any kind of progress that has been made, say, stemming from this Yaoundé Code of Conduct and any other collaborations that have taken place to try and resolve this problem from your observation?
Okay. So piracy is a global problem. It is not just about the Gulf of Guinea, but I think where we are missing it, it's easy for you to call people together, call different organizations and say, we have drafted a program, and then you give it any name.
Sure.
Effecting that program is a different thing. And I sometimes just wonder why the West African states are not collaborating when it comes to their military might. Because I mean, the sea is a very wide place, it's a very deep place, and you as military, you can't really operate outside your jurisdiction. So for you to be able to tackle piracy in West African waters, all the West African states need to work together.
Sure.
Their navy needs to be able to be integrated together, that if I'm chasing someone, I can chase the person out of my maritime zone into another country's maritime zone because there is an MOU between us.
Wow.
So we need to have that collaboration, that military strength, bring it up together. I mean, if you consider the African states, they are small in nature and their military might is not so strong. So imagine just one country trying to muzzle with strength against these pirates. I mean, these guys are sophisticated, and their tactics grow almost by the day. One aspect that Nigeria has managed to make headway, and I'm speaking for Nigeria because I'm more current with their news than other states, is implementing a law. So in 2019, there was a law that was signed. There was a law that came into force. They call it the POMO Act, and it's called the Suppression of Piracy and Other Maritime Offences Act 2019,
Oh,
POMO Act.
so that means
So
prior to that promulgation of that law, piracy was not actually a crime.
it was a crime, but we didn't have any law that was backing. So if you caught somebody today in the act of piracy, there was no law, that a standalone law that you could try the person under, if you understand what I mean.
I
But
see.
with the coming of this law, is now a standalone. And I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 people were sentenced to, I think, I've forgotten how many years imprisonment they gave them, and a fine of about 20 million naira. So you begin to see that we are now going to be able to try these people. And with the news of the first set of people being tried successfully
Sure.
and sentencing, it would act as a deterrent to those who are hoping to go into the act or already in the act, knowing that, oh, if I'm caught, I'm going to be tried under the POMO Act and I can go to jail. So if other countries have similar laws, because again, if you study the way piracy operates, it works as a cartel. It's public knowledge. So I'm permitted to say that most of the crews that were kidnapped deep sea, some off Cotonou, somehow get to be released in Nigeria. Some crews were kidnapped somewhere south of Sao Tome and Principe. The crew were released in Nigeria after a month. So you get to see that the cartel is very wide, that you can kidnap somebody in one country and then transport the person, boycott the customs of and the immigrations of those countries and get the person to Nigeria. So every country in the West Africa have to have laws that are similar to this one, that people can be tried and persecuted under. I think it will really help the fight against piracy.
Quite. No, that's a very fair point. That's a very fair point there. And then just to, as a last matter on this question of piracy that we're talking about, on the international collaborations, I do understand that the French were actually sponsoring some Navy vessels to actually, to carry the weight, to assist the Nigerian military together with the neighboring states in trying to, ward off these pirates. Has that been sustained, more specifically because now of this COVID situation? How do you have any knowledge of how that collaboration is going on?
Yeah, I remember that. I think last year there was a piracy incident where a Spanish warship was able to assist. Recently, I haven't really heard about them. I don't know if we still have support from the other international organizations or countries to support in the fight against piracy. But I think that whatever is happening in the Gulf of Eden needs to be replicated around the Gulf of Guinea. So if you have the presence of warships and the military, it will help ward off these, pirates, knowing that warships are just sailing around the area, monitoring operations and things that are going on around there. That alone, it will also give comfort to vessels calling at the terminal. And maybe financially, it might even help reduce the insurance premiums that companies are paying when they get into these waters. Because again, that's what is driving the cost of maritime operations up in the Gulf of Guinea. So if we have the kind of support that the Gulf of Eden is having, where different countries have their warships just sailing the area and patrolling, it will help ward off. But again, you have to think about all the politics that goes on in the world. People will start saying maybe you would use the opportunity to come and attack my country and all of that. So these vessels can't actually come into territorial waters. They will have to stay outside the exclusive economic zones of countries, which will have to be deep sea. So what happens if the piracy is taking place within the territorial water? So there are lots of gray areas, but I think that if we are ready as humanity to combat it, I think we can win.
Okay. Yeah, no. Thank you so much, man, for shedding light on this question of piracy, which is really a problem that we need to resolve as quickly as possible. Not just as Nigeria and ECOWAS, but as the entire continent, because it's our problem. It's really our problem as a whole.
True.
Um, Now,
Yeah.
moving a little bit away from this question of piracy to more current matters. The world over, there is nothing else being spoken about in the world right now apart from COVID-19. How have you been affected by this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it's a global problem, as you said. So it's not just me, not just the company, not just the maritime industry. Everybody is affected. Personally, so we've had to work from home for a couple of months now, and I would always say that for me, working from home doesn't work. It's just not. It's just not as comfortable. It's not as lively as it would be if you had to come to work. You had a plan of what you had to do. You go for lunch, come back to work, and then um, you close at the appropriate closing time. What happened initially in my case was when we started working from home initially, we missed out a lot of things like lunch. So people could still fix meetings during your lunch, not because they intended to take your lunch, but because almost everything went online. So things that people could do physically, they couldn't do anymore. So everybody was just fixing meetings. So you can wake up in the morning and you will attend meeting from morning up to your lunch time and after your lunch time. So it became a problem, but it was later addressed. So um, just as every human on earth, I can't wait for us to get our lives back to normal. I don't think this is normal, and I don't want this to be. People say is the new normal. I don't want this to be the new normal. It's not working for me.
Well, yeah, some human resource specialists have been saying that, human beings are social beings, and therefore we'll get back to what we used to in the past to a certain extent, whenever that will be.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, no, quite. And then just looking at your country, yeah, from a maritime or shipping perspective, what developments, what positive developments have you observed in Nigeria's maritime industry? Maybe you can such mention one or two examples for us.
Okay. Development is fishy. It might be. I think everything is still in progress. I haven't really seen a great progress in that aspect, but there are things that the government is doing currently, and one of them is the railway that they are building. So now we've been having lots of congestion in our ports, and there are plans to decongest the ports. One of the plans is by building rail tracks that would transport the containers out from the port. The second thing they're trying to do is to build other ports in other states. So currently, if you say Nigeria and you say maritime, everybody will say Lagos, Apapa. That's where most people would know because it's like where almost all our cargo gets to. So it makes that port very congested, and it makes ships wait a lot of time out at sea, just waiting for their turn to get into port. So if the government can make good on their promise to decongest and shift away from Lagos and get to build ports in places like Akwa Ibom, Anambra. I mean, wherever there is water, you should have a port there. And then for the port that we already have, there is a port in Calabar, Cross River State, but it's not operating at its maximum. Maybe it's operating at 50 or 40% capacity. So if we can put infrastructures down in those places, dredge some of these channels so that deep vessels with deep draft can actually have access to them, I think we'll begin to make progress. So not much is really happening. Yes, there are things that are in progress, but we are not yet reaping the fruits of them. So I would not call them development. Let them complete these things first, and then we can say, okay, we are making progress in our maritime industry.
Okay. No, quite. I understand. Looking at now more broadly in the African continent, what do you think are points of collaboration between African states in the development of maritime, more especially in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? I mean, what would your thoughts be there in terms of points of contact amongst us ourselves as African countries in developing the maritime industry?
Okay, so I would pose a question to you.
Sure.
You are South African, right?
What?
If I was to bring my Nigerian certificate of competency, which I don't have, by the way, but if I was to bring my Nigerian certificate of competency to seek for an employment on board one of the South African flag vessels, do you think that that certificate would be recognized and I will be given a job? That would be where my first thought will go to. So you can't say we have free trade amongst African countries when we don't value our own things. We first of all need to start valuing Africa, African. So I know that South African certificates are valid in Nigeria and they are accepted. You can use them to work. Ghanaian certificates are not that. Ghanaian certificates are like, with all due respect to them, not their fault, but they are like second class certificates. Then Nigerian certificates in Nigeria are like third class certificates. So you come back with a British certificate, Philippines, Australian, Canadian, name it, everybody accepts it. But when it's your own thing, you don't value what you produce. So African states need to start valuing African certification. If we have schools that are recognized by the IMO to issue certificates, those certificates has to be accepted within the continent. That way, you would begin to have maritime professionals and maritime officers showcase themselves out there, and people will begin to recognize Africa as a maritime continent. Because now when you talk about maritime, people look at the UK, people look at Philippines, you know, people look at some European countries, Croatia, and not really when you tell someone that you are a seafarer or you're a deck officer and they say, where are you from? Say you are from Nigeria. Some people begin to wonder, do you guys even have water in your country? You know, and that's ridiculous. So we need to start valuing our own certificates. Second thing is security. You can't trade, like I mentioned earlier. So you have to pay all these insurance premiums because you are going into a piracy prone area. So shipping to Nigeria becomes difficult or expensive, not difficult. Shipping to Ghana becomes expensive, not because they should be, but because the mining companies have to pay insurance premiums of the area that you are going into. So the African countries need to take security seriously. If you want to trade, you want free trade, let there be security. If I have an opportunity of taking my cargo somewhere else where I don't have to pay high premiums for, I would rather go there rather than to bring it to Nigeria where I will have to deal with the issue of piracy and high insurance premiums. So for me, those are the two basic things that we need to do as a continent. First, recognize and accept your own certificates. Secondly, tackle security, make the place a safer place to trade.
Quite. Now that's a very valid points and very insightful points as well. I think from my own observation, from a regulatory perspective, the framework is there already according to the African Integrated Maritime Strategy 2050. It empowers ministers across the continent to collaborate, not just on issues of education, but on a number of issues as well, to make sure that every single country we can be able to work and collaborate together and cooperate on a number of fields with respect to maritime. So yeah, I think the framework is there. We just need to act on it, like you are saying now, to actually having meaning on the ground, so that people can be able to move around the continent freely and easily.
I agree. I agree. Like I mentioned earlier, so putting things to paper it's simple, or it might not be simple, but it's easy to just put things down and say we have an agreement. This is what we are going to do. But actually doing it and bringing it to reality is something else. African countries need to walk the talk. It's easy to talk, but let's start walking the talk. If we don't start, then we are always going to be always be behind. I mean, it's just think about it. You take a Spanish certificate of competency to the UK, you are going to get a job. It's accepted, it's recognized, and they have and I didn't mention the issue of corruption generally in African states. So people are worried about fake certifications and all that. As a recruiter, you can take my COC number, go to the MCA website, put the number in there, and check if it is valid or not. These systems what pains me is that these systems are already out there. Why can't we just adopt it? And then the UK have what they call Certificate of Equivalent Competency, the CEC. I used to ask myself, if I was the Minister of Transport or the DG of NIMASA is the body that oversees the maritime affairs of Nigeria. One thing I would have done to generate money for my country is, as a Nigerian working on a ship that trades into within or into Nigeria. So even if it's a foreign going vessel, but so far you come to Nigeria, I would make you to have a CEC, a Nigerian CEC. So you can have your certificate from wherever you want, but because you're trading in Nigeria, you are going to have a CEC. That would also expose our COC out there. So I have a British COC, but then my country said, because you're a Nigerian, you're trading into our waters, you are supposed to have a CEC. So give me $250 or give me $500. You don't need to sit an exam because you've already sat an exam and passed. All you need to do is pay me and I give you a certificate. So I would generate money for my country. Secondly, I would put the Nigerian COC out there. That COC, I don't know if it's accepted anywhere in the world apart from Nigeria. And that's really a shame. It really is. Also, we need to check our standard of education. We need to see what people are doing and just adopt it. If we don't have the expertise, we need to seek the expertise. Send people out for training, get them trained and bring them back to grow your own country. These things are already there. No need to reinvent the wheel.
Quite. And then, I mean, you say that on the seagoing side, things look a bit bleaker, but on the shore-based studies, things are more promising there. For instance, you have what is going on in the Regional Maritime University in Ghana, where they have an exchange program or collaboration with universities like Shanghai Maritime Universities. It would be great to have sort of similar collaborations on the seagoing side of things as well, to have that exchange of expertise and exposure as well for local students, so that, you know, we have the kind of education that we get is balanced in terms of global standards as well.
Exactly. I agree with you. There's no need to, like I said, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. People are already doing these things. Collaborate with people. Collaboration is just the word. Collaborate with some schools. Like, what stops Maritime Academy of Nigeria from collaborating with Southampton Solent University? Get to learn from them. These days, you don't even need to travel down there. We are miles away, but I mean, we are communicating. So get this experience from them and try to develop or improve what you already have. See what you have and compare it to what the world has, and then try to improve your standards so that you put yourself out there. If you ask people, why don't you recognize the Nigerian COC? It's simple. The standard of education in Nigeria is low. So how can we improve the standard of education? What are people studying outside? What are the things that they need? If it is the natural things like the water we already have, again, people are not getting um, the opportunity to save on board vessels. We have one law they call cabotage law, which you are supposed to have a certain percentage of Nigerians on board your vessel. That's not happening. So we have a lot of, just as we have a lot of unemployed graduates from a normal university, we have a lot of graduates from the Maritime Academy of Nigeria that have not, some of them have never stepped their feet on a ship before.
That's really
So how are they supposed to progress? So if I didn't get the opportunity to be sponsored to the UK, maybe I would have been in that category, because some of my colleagues still don't have a job, have still not had a seat time. So if they don't have a seat time, how do they get to sit for their COC? In the UK, you incorporate your cadetship with your seagoing experience. So it's like a sandwich program. But in Nigeria, you just go to school and then you finish your ND, you're supposed to go and look for a place to do a 1-year IT on board. But where is that opportunity? Why is the government not taking that space seriously to ensure that the mere fact that you are a student here guarantees that you go on board and have your 1-year IT experience as a cadet, and then you come down and then you can do your COC. I think these are things that are already working for other countries. All we just need to do is to copy it.
No, fantastic. No, you're quite right. That's really that's all really we need to do. Put laws, put policy into action so that change can start
Yeah,
happening. Quite. Yeah, I
yeah.
think we've sort of covered this issue of it, the points that you wanted to raise there, which are really good points. As we move now to the end of our conversation, you spoke earlier on about your academic achievements and progress with your undergraduate, now also together with your postgraduate studies as well in Canada. Tell me, broadly speaking, what are your future plans? Where do you see yourself in the future?
Um, well, one question I get asked often is, are you ever going back to sea? And I think it's relative. I don't know where life takes me to from here. If I have the opportunity, I would love to get to the peak of my sea career. That's taking a command of a ship. But if the opportunity doesn't come, it's not the end of the world. There are also opportunities assured that I can grow myself to become better. So which route I'm taking, I have no idea. For now, this is where I am assured. So I'm trying to do things that can help me progress my career while I am unsure. If for any reason I happen to go back to sea, maybe get promoted to the next rank, then fine. At the moment, I just completed my master's program, and I want to become chartered. I want to become a member of the Chartered Institute of Shipbrokers. So I've already registered with them, and I will be taking the exams in November. And the second, so I'm going to apply for exemption for 3 courses. So I will be left with 4. So I will take 2 exams in November, and then I take 2 in May next year. Academically, maybe the future might see me pursuing a PhD. I don't know, but I think it's something that I would want to do in the long run. It's something I might want to do in the long run. So, I mean, those are basically my immediate plan and my long-term plan.
Sure. No. Great. Success. Thank you so much for your insights, for your views. And yeah, thank you so much for availing yourself for this interview. It was really a pleasure to have you on our platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lulama. I'm so grateful. Thank you for the opportunity for letting me air my views on your channel, and thanks for giving me this platform to speak. I'm really grateful, and it means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Much appreciated. To our viewers, thank you for joining us here on Ship to Shore once again. Thank you and goodbye.